All right, Dustin, this is it. We're here. The finale, episode 9 of season 3, entitled All the Bells Say. And dude, I feel like I'm in anaphylactic shock just recovering from that episode in general. Like,
Same.
God damn, dude. I texted you immediately after it was done. This show does it again. It pulls out all the stops. It resolves all of the tension. It puts you in a great spot in order to anticipate the next season. And we're gonna break it all down on tonight's finale of our final recap series, TV recap series of 2021. Stay tuned. Well, Dustin, as a few people and a couple of other pop culture things would say, we have reached the end. We have reached the end here of all things. We are here to talk about the season 3 finale of Succession, entitled All of the Bells Say. I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm ready to say goodbye to the show yet. Just saying. I've been having so much fun watching and reacting to this to the show these last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Oh man, like what just brass tack thoughts, like just break it down for me. Like as soon as this episode was done, before we start to break down any of the details, like what were your immediate thoughts? Like, did you see any of this coming as far as the sneak attack, surprise ploy, anything like that?
Yeah, near the end, I was starting to suspect, like, the last couple of minutes, like, I pulled a U where I was just like, yep, I see this coming, and, like, with Tom, and I was just like, yep, he's the one. Because as soon as Brian Cox found out about, like, what they were doing, it's like, who told him? Who told him? As soon as they were starting to, I was like, it has to be Tom.
Yeah.
I don't think because Greg doesn't know anything.
Right.
So it's like Tom knows. So, like, he's the only one. So it's like, yeah, it didn't really shock me like that, 'cause, like in the moment when it happened, because I guessed it like 2 minutes beforehand. So it was like that, but like at the end, like this episode just made me feel like Kendall at the end of season 1 and the beginning of season 2. Where it's like it just made me feel like I just killed a kid or something.
Wow.
Like this show just makes me feel like so many different emotions. Like I kind of feel cool for Tom or whatever because he's my second favorite character, but at the same time, what is he specifically trying to gain, and what does he think he can gain from this? And that's what we'll talk about later, I suppose. But yeah, there's just so many questions I have about the motivations of certain characters and Jerry, and and then how all the kids get fucked over and inevitably, and all of them, Shiv and especially Roman by the end of this episode realize what Kendall has been really going through and been put in the ringer. And we'll talk about that reveal scene with Kendall later, but like, yeah, I can't wait to talk about that with you.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, brass tacks, just if I like my base thoughts about the episode, right? There was obviously a lot of emotions going into tonight's episode. It was, again, there were just so many things that this season had set up, so many things that we thought were going to be so much more important going into this season than they ultimately turned out to be. A few things that we kind of criticized the show for. We were wondering, I'm like, okay, these writers, they're so good, but ultimately, what is it that they're trying to accomplish here? Where is this going to go? And the way that, oh my God, just the way that they're able to pull the rug out from under you and once again increase the tension in all of the best ways through all of the television conventions with some of the best filmmaking and some of the most non-conventional kind of transformative filmmaking that we've seen in this space really ever. It continues to amaze me what this show is capable of and how it consistently pulls out all the stops. This episode to me was strange in a way, because I think the biggest takeaway that you could start off with from this episode is Logan does something rather uncharacteristic, rather that you thought is kind of apropos to his character, which I think is kind of the point where I want to start is Logan, because where Logan, who is a character that started off last season on a low and started off this season on a low, ended last season on a low, is now ultimately, survived once again, but by having to ultimately sacrifice something that he kind of was his whole antithesis of the show, setting him up as this antagonist figure for Kendall, but also the opposite co-lead of the show, in that he's this person that will not willingly bend or break for anyone. He is there through his force of will and his force of will alone, to the point where every other character around him is just consistently scared by him, to the point where he can literally sway characters into doing things that are against quite possibly their better judgment just because of his iron will. And what this episode, and really last episode too, demonstrated to me is that Logan is not the figure that we necessarily thought, in the sense that he's that kind of season 1 potentially set him up as, and that he's this figure that will do or die based on his own will, regardless of common sense functionality, right? We now see that that's not the case. What this episode did confirm to us about Logan, though, is that ultimately what he is trying to do is outlast his kids, both metaphorically and literally, to the point where this entire season, in a strange way, now that kind of the wool's been pulled back, almost seems to be a little bit of like a test check, if you will, right? It kind of goes back to like, I feel like everything that they were doing with the Adrian Brody episode in episode 4, where it's like this series of tests that you don't even realize are tests ultimately until it comes time to until the rug is pulled out from under us, where we spend the entirety of this season, like, again, like Shiv seems to be up against the wall. Roman seems to be being positioned for greatness. Tom is just there in the background, seemingly losing his mind ultimately. And what this finale brings to the peripheral is that all that background stuff that we were kind of like, okay, why is this here? It was all important. And it was all important because at the end of the day, Logan once again cements his position as this planet with which everyone else revolves around, with his decision ultimately to sell the company to Mattson. And I think it's interesting because I wanted to talk about the Mattson thing real quick before we got into the rest of the kids, which is that how interesting is it? Because we see this happen, I feel like, a lot in business in the real world, right? Where Mattson is this figure that seemingly presents himself as nothing more than an antagonist to Logan first. But as he meets him and gets to know him, he realizes not quite that Mattson is everything that's kind of missing from his kids. Mattson's got the ambition. He's got the drive. He doesn't seemingly have the emotional damage. And at the same time, he doesn't really have like the dependence factor per se that the rest of the kids do. While at the same time, seemingly pointing, challenging Logan in a way that really nobody else does. Because Logan is a character that only responds to challenge and fire. That's the only thing that motivates him ultimately. And Mattson presents quite literally the Kobayashi Maru to end all Kobayashi Marus. He presents the no-win scenario, which is that, look, you're a stubborn old bastard and you have made your way through this much alone, but you also know that what I'm saying is right. And you know that if you stay your current course, then you will ultimately be made, you will be rendered irrelevant. And that is not something that Logan can tolerate at all. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on just the whole Mattson Logan thing and how that went just in general, as far as that, like that being a realistic way for like Logan to go, as far as that finally being the move to make him sell the company?
Well, I think it's smart on Logan's behalf, especially since like he's going through like all this controversy in the media that Kendall started. So it's like, yeah, to sell the company to Alexander Skarsgård character, who's probably going to be a cool, like, we're going to see more of him in probably the next season, which I can't wait for as well. That's going to be cool, and it just sets up the 4th season brilliantly. If anything that I could say positively about this conclusion of the season is that, yeah, we're probably going to see, like, instead of like one of the siblings going out on their own and trying to make it and topple the family, and realize it's like fucking impossible, they're going to team up with all the siblings now. So like we're going to have a sibling season 4, sibling team up, and that's going to be dope as fuck. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I think it's smart of Logan to do that.
Yeah, it was the smart decision in the making. And that, of course, leads to, as we know, how it kind of progresses throughout. Like, this is kind of the first time that we actually get to see, like, the siblings team up and actually, like, be on the same side. And in a really interesting bit of, oh my God, all these fucking English language words that I can never remind me of. In an interesting juxtaposition, let's call it, to the initial meeting of the siblings back all the way back in episode 2, all those weeks ago, is that now, rather than kind of being motivated each by a sense of self-interest, now they are motivated literally by their own survival, ultimately. Because as they come to find out, right, Mattson taking over as CEO rebukes their position, ultimately, and kind of their stake in the company, and kind of, like I said, forces them to actually understand their own and kind of like take some real responsibility, which is something that they've never really had, which, of course, that part of Logan's argument at the end in that absolutely brilliant monologue, that does kind of ring true ultimately, in the sense that, yeah, they are ultimately pedestrians, and ultimately they have the 3 of them specifically have not really done a lot in his eyes to really earn it. And this kind of goes towards, again, I feel like just the idea of mixing family with business in general. And that's what makes the show so compelling, is the fact that family is family and business is business, because the conflicting feelings of emotions can get messy ultimately, on top of the fact that these 3 are already so emotionally damaged because of how their father and really their mother has raised them, and the fact that they so are looking for love and validation in the worst possible place by attempting to perform this coup against their dad. It ultimately shows why Logan is able to get the drop on kind of all three of them, because even though really the only kind of nitpick that I do have that almost pulls the entire plan apart, which sucks because it's so brilliantly how it's written, is the fact that, okay, Lady Caroline, their mother, is so cold that she's perfectly willing to sabotage her kids' futures just because. Why? Like that was the only thing that really kind of didn't make sense to me. So I don't know, maybe you caught something that I didn't.
I don't think they really dropped anything. I just think it's open for interpretation, where it's like maybe Logan. Oh yeah, wasn't it like something to do with like her husband? Like he like promised the husband like a position,
right?
Or something like that.
Right,
like I
right.
have to like go back and like look at the specifics, but I'm pretty sure it's something involving like the husband, like and that's what like was probably her stipulation in order to change the thing. Give my husband a bone, my new husband a bone, or
Right.
something like that. So like she definitely fucked them over.
Yeah,
For sure.
it's I don't know. It's just the way that kind of the not necessarily the character motivation that's there, but just like the logistics of it to me, they don't necessarily make that much sense, which is why I was just a little bit
It's just
confused
too
by it.
convenient, yeah.
Right, exactly. But again, just how it's so brilliantly built up. So like, I guess my question for you is, do you think that this is the most well-written episode of the season? Because I'm still trying to figure out. Because I'm still trying to figure out if I'm just still kind of riding the hype wave of just like, whoa, okay. And also because this is the first season of Succession that I've watched week to week. So like now kind of the wave of emotions that everyone felt coming out of that season, like the Gangbusters season 2 finale, and even more so from the season 1 finale, all of the few people that watched it back when it actually aired week to week rather than catching up on it during the pandemic. This was really my first instance of really like understanding the wow factor of it, but I'm still trying to figure out if that's kind of like superseding some of the better written, because I still do think that this is a brilliantly written episode, but I'm just trying to figure out if it weighs up to like the last 2 episodes to me, which are like still like easily 2 of the most well-written episodes of television like ever,
Yeah, but I don't think it's the strongest written. I think, like you were saying, the way it's paced and the way the build up is presented is brilliant, just because of the way it's directed and performed by the brilliant cast that we praise week to week. But yeah. I just feel like episode 3 and the birthday episode and the first couple episodes of the season were like more, just classic Succession episodes, and just straight to the point. There was parts of this episode that were written brilliantly that we'll get into, with Kendall's character, who did not die, by the way. Kendall
Thank
did
God.
not die, obviously. And we come to learn that, oh yeah, I want to make a correction, by the way, for the viewers. I made a mistake. I don't think that was Rava last week at the wedding with him. I'm pretty sure that was the nanny, the one that called him about the rabbit like
Right.
a
Okay,
couple
that
weeks
makes
prior.
sense.
I want to clarify, but at the same time, someone was hovering over him, and this episode it was made apparent that Comfrey was the one who came to his aid and is the one that ended up saving him. So yeah, Kendall didn't die. Just want to clarify that.
All right. Yeah, because I went back and because I rewatched the episode 2 beforehand, and I was like, oh, I don't see Rava here, but thank you for that. So last season I was just doing a quick little bit of reading there. We were clarifying that, and so last season, season 2, right, the season that got all of the Emmy nominations. So famously, the only episode that was nominated, and rightfully so, won for writing that year, was the season 2 finale. This Is Not for Tears. That was the only episode nominated for writing, against 2 episodes from Better Call Saul, 1 episode from The Crown, and 3 episodes from Ozark, which is ridiculous to me because that was season 3, which I hated. And then it was one of 2 episodes were nominated for directing. Famously, Mark Mylod for the finale, This Is Not for Tears as well, for season 2, lost to Andrzej Perek, who directed Hunting. So I guess my question is, because I think there's a lot of episodes to choose from this season. I feel like more than the first 2 for writing and directing. So I guess that, like, which of the episodes do they submit and which ones actually get nominated?
Kathy Yan.
Well, for directing, obviously Kathy Yan and
Lorene Scafaria.
most definitely for episodes 3 and 7. But I don't know.
You could nominate this one too.
Right.
for directing.
I really do think the Mark Mylod's directing in this episode more than any of the previous ones was exceptional. Just like, especially the way that like he hunkers down, like specifically the scene with the siblings when Kendall's like finally having his breakdown and admitting to them about like killing the kid. I think that the direction around that was superb. Obviously, the final sequence, obviously the moment between Tom and Greg where Tom is kind of like asking Greg to come with him again, like, and just like where that built to, just amazing stuff.
Yeah,
but
Mark Mylod has just become like a great creative director and television director for this show and this specific type of black humor. And I can't wait to see his feature film with Nicholas Hoult, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Ray Fiennes, like a cannibalistic, a rom-com called The Menu. So like that's supposed to be another
wait, he's doing that?
Yeah, darkly comic movie, and Alexander Payne was supposed to do it.
Yeah, I was about to say that movie's gone through a couple different directors. That was Alexander Payne's last movie before he got canceled. But yeah. So my question is, so for the directing, right? But specifically for the writing, right? Because we know TV's the writer's medium. Like I really am throwing my head because like my whole thing that I'm ruling out. Episodes 1, I'm ruling out. Episode 2, I'm ruling out. Episode 5, I'm ruling out, and I'll say episode 4, I'm ruling out as well. All for writing. As far as I'm concerned, all the other episodes are viable. Every single other one, like even down to episode 6, which I feel like is kind of the most looked over as far as, but just at the point in the show where it was at. But like, I really, really don't know because I'm still racking my brain because I still think that as great as this episode was, I still think that last week's episode was the better episode. And I'm still not even saying that those two are the best of the season.
No, I like this one more. Just because of the Kendall scene that we'll talk about, and like just the build up to that, and like you said, like the climax. Even though like I saw some of it coming, like it was still like satisfying as like a viewer. It was still like entertaining, and it was still well performed.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's transition then into the Kendall stuff before we kind of bring it back towards the end of the episode, because again, like just the way that this episode is structured is absolutely brilliant. So we got right into it, right, with obviously Kendall being confirmed. I also love the twisted opening too, where he's reading a book to Kendall's son, even though Kendall's son is like, how old is this kid? Like the aging of kids in these shows is 13, so freaking
maybe.
He's reading a storybook to his 13-year-old grandson, and I'm like, okay, so you still read books to them. Okay, that's cool. But and then like kind of how it transitioned where it's like, okay, like they're still building up like the mystery and aura, and then before Kendall finally comes in and he's still playing it off as like, oh, he slipped into the pool and everything. But I want to talk about Alan Ruck's Emmy moment for a second, because like
this was his best episode.
This is the one that gets him the Emmy nom. It has to, over Nicholas Braun, because I personally really think that if Nicholas Braun gets nominated for this season over Alan Ruck, I'm actually going to be really, really unsatisfied.
I will agree with that,
because there's no way that Culkin and McFadden lose out. I definitely think one of those two takes it this year, without a doubt. But
one of them is winning this year. It might be Kieran Culkin.
I definitely Kieran Culkin more so, because Kieran Culkin definitely like had more showy and meaty stuff. But I really don't want anyone to sleep on McFadden this season.
Not at all.
But like Alan Ruck's moment, like where it's just like and in a weird.
I'm the eldest son.
I'm the eldest son. That was so strange and validating, because in a strange way, it was very, very bizarre foreshadowing for like the siblings realizing their place within Logan's hierarchy, because the whole thing is they realize, because I got this bit from listening to the watch earlier. I'm like, holy shit, they're all about to be Connored. They're all about to be Connored with the whole thing with potentially wanting to have another kid with the friggin' with his assistant, the Patty Jenkins lookalike. And what's even crazier is
right?
I wouldn't even be surprised if that was something that he already had prearranged with Marsha. And that was something within like the crazy lawyer negotiation that they had when she came back in the second episode.
Or Holly Hunter.
Her too, but I don't know. Maybe because Holly Hunter like could have actually like. I think the whole thing with Holly Hunter is that Holly Hunter was actually like. I'm thinking about this more like kind of now out loud. I think that Holly Hunter was way like Marsha saw her way more as like potentially competitive and something that could like actually like pose a threat to her personally, versus the assistant she only sees as like, okay, she's only there for like one purpose and one purpose only, so she's like, okay, she's cool, because that's just how rich people like justify these heinous acts in their heads and kind of like continue to justify like their position ultimately. So that wouldn't surprise me at all, and if anything, it would almost like kind of make more sense, because Logan and Marsha's relationship has always been very fascinating to me, even if it's been completely brushed over at this point. But bringing it back to Connor, right, and how like kind of they transitioned that into the Willem moment, like I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Like for a season that I think has been quite frankly, like kind of it's been back and forth. It seemed like they were positioning Connor to actually like have a purpose and a point this season, and then ultimately it's showing up he's just more so just the jokey character. But I thought that was so validating because like the more and more that we found out about him as the season has gone on, in that he is just this person who is ultimately looking for just the love and validation that in a strange way his siblings are, but because they look in a strange way, their relationship with him is almost like kind of like the respective relationship between Tom and Greg, where they kind of view him as like the goofy half sibling that isn't there to be taken seriously. It was really strangely validating when Kendall's like, me as the oldest son and everything, and Connor's like, whoa, and then he starts fighting back at them and fighting back at them, quite frankly, in a tone that is honestly a little bit uncharacteristic of him, because he's always been like, for the most part, like really even keeled, really even tempered, never really like kind of, doing the insults that way unless he's like really provoked emotionally. And this was one of those instances he kind of fires right back, is like, look, and that was kind of his moment. It's like, look, I love all you guys, probably way more than you will ever love me, but stop fucking disrespecting me this way, because it's not cool, And as the strange provoker, and then how that transitions into the Willa sequence, where, and I want to talk about Willa for a second, in that Willa, another character that has been drastically underused this season after being promoted to main cast member, and similar to what's her name? Not Tabitha, Naomi, a couple episodes ago, where she actually got her moment to shine in Kendall's birthday episode. In this one, you actually kind of see like Willa start to understand the position that she's in, where Willa, in a strange way, has been like Greg, but off screen, where she's been doing this push-pull balancing act between like using Connor for what he's worth, but also like understanding like kind of her position and like, attempting to do her best, even though I don't think she definitely feels the same way about him now. She kind of hastily provokes, accepts his marriage proposal in kind of like a fuck it mode. Very similar in a strange way. I pointed this out in my pending top 10 Succession characters episode, to almost like the way that Lady Caroline, and in a strange way that Shiv last episode kind of said fuck it with diving in with Tom. And you see her at the end. Like, this is a thing that I've seen in a lot of different HBO shows, where they have the one character that feels ultimately entrapped in their circumstances, very similar to the Christopher episode of The Sopranos third season, when he got made and he sees the Raven sitting outside the window. The last shot of her getting into that limo, and she just looks at you, just see this look on her face. You're just like, oh, man.
It's like she's already regretting it.
She's already regretting it. Exactly. Ultimately. Let's talk about Shiv, too, because, oh, man, you want to talk about sulfuring the ultimate consequence for their actions this season. And we see this as a direct repercussion for just how she treated Tom in the last episode, where Tom, to me, like the Tom decision ultimately is way more so a fuck you to Shiv and his final like kind of way of getting back at her, and in a way like kind of fucking over all of them.
Yeah.
Regardless of how intentionally, because like now he's ultimately made himself invaluable to Logan in a way that none of the other siblings and his actual children really do. And like, you want to talk about the chickens coming home to roost for Shiv after a season where I think the thing that was most satisfying about Shiv is that this was ultimately her Kendall kind of season 2 moment, where she was trying to play big dog after being built up by her dad, and realized that not only was she being played and manipulated by him, but also was just shown to be totally out of her depth. And unlike Kendall, who at least for the most part, whenever he was in these situations and boardroom meetings in the first 2 seasons, at the very least seemed like he had some sense of what he was doing, right? Shiv ultimately proved that she had no idea what she was doing, that she had absolutely kind of no place being there. It felt like every decision that she did,
all talk, no walk,
on top of the fact that she seemed to play the woman card to her advantage almost a little bit too much, and that ended up coming in and blowing up in her face, to the point where she kind of just literally just like said fuck it in Kendall's birthday episode. And I don't know, like it definitely felt like it definitely felt like satisfying, but not in a great way, because when is anything like ever really satisfying or beneficial to these characters? And it's definitely gonna be really interesting to see if Shiv actually quote unquote learns anything in these next however many seasons we're gonna get of this show. Like, I don't know, like, what are the odds, 0 to 10 that Shiv actually learns anything, especially after having
0.
now suffered. But I guess now the difference being that before that now,
1.
like the person that she directly took advantage of, the person that she like kind of had her one agency over with Tom, has now ultimately surpassed her in a way that really, like, again, no one saw coming, least of all
in a
her.
way. But like, as far as we know, the next, the first episode of season 4, it's just like that dynamic can completely just go around again, and just like, that's what this show does so brilliantly. It's like you think one character is ahead like one episode, and it's like completely polar opposite the next episode. It's like a seesaw of emotions.
It's a what is it? A never-ending Ferris wheel of emotions. Ultimately, they just get in and they go round and round and round, and just when they think they can get off the ride, it keeps going. Ultimately, until they're dizzy and sick and it's
Well,
still
that's just
going.
that just sounds like a torture chamber that like where maybe a crazy guy got control of that Ferris wheel that you're talking
Is
about.
it? Is
I
it?
think my
Is it too far of a stretch though for the show?
I think my seesaw analogy works better, but I think the viewers can decide that.
They can
Can you?
decide that
Ta-
ultimately.
Up to you, talking TV-ers. We'll see you next season. But
Let,
on
let,
to the next topic.
let's talk about Tom, man, because Tom, oh man,
Tommy
like
T.
it's so funny because I remember after the last season finale aired, I remember like I think it was like a oh my god, what is it? A Screen Rant article or something, basically breaking down like kind of who won and who lost from the episode, right? I think they had it's like Kendall, it was Kendall, Roman and Tom, Kendall, Roman and Greg winning. Logan, Shiv, and Tom losing, and Connor just kind of stuck on an island on his own. I feel like that's going to be Connor's position consistently. But I love how by the end of this season, the positions have completely shifted. Where now Greg is still in the winning team because he's the writer's favorite character, but Greg now Logan and Tom back on number one.
Just because Tom just really has like a real fascination with him.
Well, Tom's fascination with him ultimately, and I think the point of interest is going to be seeing if that's able to continue, right? Because Greg ultimately, after proving slightly useful within the first couple of episodes, just ultimately proved to like kind of being relegated to like background noise in this season, which is fine, but like, okay, so he might become a king, he might become a duke, and like they play that up as a joke ultimately, and then ultimately shows that it's like, yeah, now he's kind of like accepted his position of kind of being soulless and heartless like the rest of the Roys, but ultimately kind of more so out of a position of idiocy, which I don't know. My biggest problem with Greg is how he goes from last season being like, okay, I don't want to be in this one position because of like perceived racism. And like, okay, so if he is becoming more and more evil like the Roys, I need to see a little bit more of a natural transition outside of what we've gotten. And I just have not gotten that yet. But I don't know, like just I don't know. The relationship between Tom and Greg felt very one-sided, which I guess is kind of like ridiculous considering how one-sided their relationship has been. But like, I guess that the biggest point that comes from that is that Tom is like, who else in this entire family or organization has looked out for you in a way that I have? And I guess in a position owing to the fact that Succession usually is not a show that hides behind facades, he's not necessarily wrong per se, because ultimately, if we look at how Greg and Kendall's relationship went this season, Kendall used Greg up until he couldn't anymore.
Yeah.
And then ultimately broke down and just left him lurching in the dust. So in a strange way, as messed up as it was, Tom was right.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is crazy. And like, I don't know, like this entire episode just gave me such major Godfather vibes. And not just because of the setting in Italy, just because of like
and the kiss at the end.
Right. The level of intimacy that's built up between the characters, and ultimately how Godfather at its best was a family drama, because the family dynamics between all of them were so well done and so well thought out. And this reminded me all that I think one of my favorite sequences in this is the scene where they're all sitting down playing Monopoly, and then Kendall walks up and kind of all of their different reactions to him and kind of like the intervention that they show for him. It's amazingly well done. And it's crazy because I thought for a second that we were going to have a Godfather moment where kind of like, obviously, Logan takes Tom's arm, kind of revealing to the rest of them. It's like, oh shit, this is what Tom did. And then ultimately, that they were going to shut the door on all of the siblings. I thought for a second we were going to get that. We didn't. And in hindsight,
but we practically did get that moment though with him. That was enough where it was just like, we didn't need to get the full on rip off, but we did get the forehead kiss.
Yes.
So.
Yes, we did. Ultimately.
To each of their own.
Yeah. Roman, talk about going from slow build up, having arguably the highest of all the sibling highs that all the siblings have had throughout the course of this show, and then just crashing and burning at the bottom. It really is a conundrum, because I don't know. Do you actually believe that Roman would have been quote unquote taken care of if he had sided with Logan against the siblings there, or no?
I think it just would have been a never-ending cycle that he just puts his kids through, where it's just like they're always going to be in that trap. They're never going to be like ahead. I mean, he sold the fucking company. I mean, they're not going to be in charge. So it's like, what is the show? That's based. Maybe we'll talk about this near the end, but like, ultimately, my biggest worry about this show is like, what is the ultimate goal now? Is if none of the kids can, overthrow Alexander Skarsgård. Is Alexander Skarsgård going to be this big, galactic character in this show? So it's like, Who knows?
Do you think Skarsgård lasts 2 more seasons or only 1 more season? Do you think that something happens at the end of season 4 that will ultimately capitulate us into the 5th season?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I think Skarsgård's at an interesting point in his career where it's just like they've tried to make him a movie star and it hasn't like personally like worked out that much. So he's like going back to TV, his roots where he got his, Emmy for
Right.
undeservedly. But like, yeah, he's great on what we saw of him on this show, for like the 3 episodes he's on. But like, yeah, I definitely think he's gonna do one more season. He's gonna be fucking awesome on it. He might be even main cast in the next season.
That's
Who
what I'm
knows?
hoping. That's what I'm really, really hoping. I
Hopefully
really hope
him
that he
and
is main cast.
Justin Kirk.
Him and Justin Kirk.
Or Eric Bogosian. How fucking cool would it be if the fucking presidential race
is Eric Bogosian versus Justin Kirk?
Like, that'd be perfect.
Bro, write it out. I was about to say, call him up.
Yeah.
Let's call our reps at HBO. Oh wait, if we don't have that, we're not the Ringer. But man, that would be insane. Ultimately,
Yeah, I know.
Because that's already a rumor. Is that Logan, once he steps aside as CEO,
Bill Simmons is going to come on as like a long lost Roy son?
Hey man. Never say never. Never say never.
And Sean Fennessy is like the next cousin Greg.
Well, no, because Sean has been more so compared to Kendall over Greg, but because they're like practically the same age. But I think that I'm sorry, I gotta regain my thoughts there for a second. That was funny, but yeah, no, it's gonna be interesting to kind of see like Logan's involvement in the show, and like I don't know, like I go back and forth all the time because I still think that the perfect number of seasons for the show is 5 seasons, but like I still feel like it would be such an FU move for them to just be like, oh, we're ending it next season, because like and HBO doesn't do that. Which is why I'm still holding out hope that we get the perfect 5, right? We get the conflict with Skarsgård and everything next season, and then we get the wrap-up phase for whatever event happens at the end of season 4 that capitulates us into the final season, because this was such a gangbusters move for this show to pull at the end of this scene that I'm like, they have to do 2 more, right? There's no way they could possibly wrap all this shit up in 1 season. They have to do 2 more, even if it is shortened seasons, which I am not a fan of at all. Like I still, as much as I love this season, as much as I'm still trying to figure out like kind of where these 3 seasons rank for me within my head, I still think they could have done 1 more episode. I'm still not the biggest fan of the fact that they shortened it to 9.
I agree with that. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, man. It's like what do you think? You think they make it to 5? You think they cut it short at 4?
I hope they don't do 4. I hope it just goes to 5, like we're saying, and maybe one of the seasons, like season 5, is like 11 episodes, so we get an even 50 episodes.
Right, that would be cool. That would really be cool because, like I said, I was really looking forward to the even 30, and then it's like, nope, 29. I'm like, fuck you and your HBO and your prime numbers and your shortening goddamn seasons. I never makes sense to me. Ultimately, it's like why like the show mandates. I'm guessing it just has to do with actor contracts and scheduling stuff because I know Jeremy Strong is shooting Armageddon Time right now, and they're like already hyping him up for that. So,
ooh, he like studied with plumbers.
Oh yes, he did. He studied with plumbers. Well, remember he was Daniel Day-Lewis's understudy. As the New Yorker profile that he was in circulated, and I love how all those actors coming out to defend him, and they're like, yeah, respect the process. Nothing's wrong with Jeremy Strong. He's not the next Jared Leto. He's not a troll. He's very serious about the process. I just thought that was funny. But
Jared Leto is serious about the process. He's just like
just an asshole to everyone else about it.
Yeah, he's just trolling people now because like there's so many stories that have come out about him that have been like a little blown out of proportion.
Yeah,
not everything that was reported initially in the Suicide Squad thing was like really that true. Like the rat thing wasn't really that big of a deal. Margot Robbie liked the rat apparently.
Well,
so
she's Australian, so
whoa, what are you saying about Australian viewers? We have Australian viewers, right?
They deal with crazy. They deal with crazy
Dominic
mutated animals all the time. So
what you talking about?
What was that? Okay, that's slightly better. I'm like, what accent was that? I'm like, we're gonna go there.
What you talking about? I don't know. That's fucking Australian. Leave me alone. I'm Aboriginal.
Oh my god. Okay, Taika Waititi. But anyways,
Aborigine. Yeah,
but
right?
anyways,
it's all New Zealand.
Yeah, a little bit. But what's it called? But anyways, so oh my god, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Kendall. Let's talk about the Kendall opening up scene. So is this? We talked
I
about
was
it.
like, oh no, at first.
Well, we talked about this last episode. We've been talking about it all season, and this is like, okay, why is this show bringing this up? This is not the type of show that's going to bring this up ultimately. What? Can we please, for the love of God, put this fucking storyline to bed now? We get it. Kendall had his moment. He was able to get it off his chest, not necessarily in the healthiest ways, but when does anybody in the show ever do anything in the healthiest ways? Do you think
he tried to do it in a healthy way. Like he went completely
tried last
raw,
season, yeah.
and he told the exact truth of what happened, which I loved how the scene went. In all of my deepest fears, it still did it in the most poised and like nuanced way imaginable. This is why this show rocks, even if this is maybe my least favorite season of the show, even though it's still better than any other show on television of the last 5-10 years, or maybe ever, because it's still like such a great character written show. Maybe if not all the storylines really add up or are answered initially, the character writing is always on point. And Jeremy Strong bearing his soul to his siblings and explaining the entire scenario and saying the kid did fucking grab the wheel and cause the accident because he saw something in the road. And then the most shocking part about it was the siblings' reaction. Whereas like Roman even says, "Yeah, I've killed a kid before. Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah. Hey, Shiv, you killed a kid, right?" And even Shiv goes, "Yeah." So it's like, maybe are they bullshitting him, or are they just trying to make him feel better? But in the back of my mind, I'm saying, yeah, I don't think they're joking. I think I think they actually killed.
Yeah.
And their reaction is so like blasé and being like, "Yeah, that sucks," but like, not for the kid, for you. That sucks for you because it's not your fault, right? It's like, yeah, it's not really his fault, but it's his fault for being an addict and wanting to and being in the car in the first place.
Right.
That's his biggest fault of that accident. He didn't literally kill the kid. And he did tell the truth, right? Like, I'm not mistaken. He did try to like go in for the kid.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, he did try to go back under and try and save the kid. And then by the time he went back under, he was already dead.
Exactly. So like I thought I was Mandela affecting myself for it, but he did do that.
No, he did. He did. It's crazy because during the moment I was starting to do that too, where I'm like, wait, did he actually? I'm like, because at the time I only remembered him like resurfacing.
Yeah, is he sprinkling? Is he sprinkling like falsities on top of this? And I'm like, no, he's not actually. Kendall rocks. Okay, yeah, Kendall did do that. Yeah,
I still think, and again, just the brilliance of the show with the writing of his characters and how they're still able to pull out the funniest bit. I gotta know if. It's like, well, I'm kind of glad, because like no one, that kid took fucking forever to get me a gin and tonic. I have to know if that line was written or improv because
I think it was written.
Okay, because I mean
that was too on the that had to be written.
Yeah, that's a little bit too on the nose there. Yeah, just that moment was brilliant. I was blown away by it. I'm like. This entire season for Jeremy Strong has been like, give me my Emmy, even though he already won. I think rightfully so for season 2. Like I still think that as great as Strong was this season, and Strong was so fucking good, it got a little bit into showy territory this season, just a little bit, right? And I think that the balancing act between the kind of the Kendall from season 1 versus the overblown Kendall, like the broken Kendall of season 2, you saw like Kendall's entire gamut of emotions this season, and I still think that the underplayment and like kind of the subdued, like kind of manic energy just seeking to break through, combined with it being, diving headfirst back into addiction territory in season 2, I still think makes that the strongest of those 3 performances. But still, like, Strong is undoubtedly and unabashedly like one of the best performances, one of the best characters that HBO has ever put forth. And I don't see really anybody else winning over him this year the way that I kind of did. Like, I mean, I shouldn't really say that 2 years ago when he won the first time, but I mean, I like Bateman for that season. Ozark was gaining steam. I really wasn't sure for a long time what it was going to be with him versus Cox, because Cox had already won the Golden Globe.
Yeah, but Strong wasn't nominated for the Golden Globe.
For the Golden Globe, that's true. He was this year though, because the Golden Globe nominations and Critics' Choice nominations were announced today too. Interestingly enough,
yeah.
But
now they do.
Now, yeah, right. Funnily enough,
Posers, and they don't nominate Ansel Elgort.
Well, I mean,
that was shocking.
Yeah, actually. Well, I mean, that's good. Well, we know why that was, but
no, we don't. No, the Golden Globes do fucking controversial shit like that.
True. I'm so surprised that the Globes are happening. I thought that they got canceled because of the whole thing of last year and everyone being complaining about it. The thing that's
weird is like, I don't think they're going to be televised. I think it's only going to be like,
Like they're just gonna have the ceremony and then just announce the winners, which honestly is what they should.
Or
do
just like
because,
announce the winners, or like have like a conference
right.
after, like they announce the winners, and like the winners have like speeches or
Which
something.
honestly, at this point, I really think is what they should just do with every awards going forward, because award shows in general.
Don't be boring. Come
No,
on.
I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm only
some people like award shows. I like watching the award shows as shitty as they are.
My whole thing with it is that award shows to me, and I've watched enough of them now, I feel like are just not inherently entertaining to me. They're not, and they
watch them.
They don't. I don't. I literally don't watch award shows. But I'm saying that,
you
like,
slept during the fucking last
during the one, during the 2016 one, that was my only one that I slept through. I will say that. But like, I don't know, just the inherent nature of award ceremonies. They're just fucking boring. And like the whole pomp and circumstances show, the jokes are never good. They're always way too long. The speeches and self-seriousness of it, none of it feels ever genuine. The few genuine rare moments that do pop through are always overridden by just the overall trounce. And just the inherent nature of them. I'm not a fan of it. Like, anyway, that's not the point of this podcast. Tune into a different podcast to hear my thoughts on award ceremonies. But at the end of the day, if we're grading kind of this season on a whole, ultimately, what I'll say in comparison to the first two seasons is as far as this goes, right? It's third season, and third seasons within shows runs typically, that's where the shit really has to like nail home, because that's when, like, okay, your first two seasons, you've gotten pretty much success, but this is where you got to nail it, because the third seasons are usually the make or break season from what I've seen from most shows, like of all of the long running, like groundbreaking, like really, really big, huge, like prestige shows. Sopranos, Mad Men, Lost, Breaking Bad to an extent. Although that one I think is a little bit of an exception. I'm trying to think of other recent shows. Game of Thrones. All of those shows, their third seasons were like their big make or break kind of seasons, even if they weren't necessarily their best. I personally still feel that Mad Men season 3, it's between seasons 3 and 4 for Mad Men, but this was definitely the make or break point, and Succession has obviously been consistent enough up to this point. It's the best show on the air right now that this season definitely confirmed, okay, this show is here to stay, and this show is still one of the best. But I think in comparison to the other seasons, as far as this being, I'll say, the most engaging and prescient for like most of the storylines that things have ever been, just because of like the active combative status that I feel like most of the characters were in. I still don't I'm still kind of trying to weigh out where it compares to kind of like the subdued kind of bursting at the seams energy, like, and toxicity that was underlying throughout all of season 2 versus kind of just like the almost like kind of giddy and irreverent nature of season 1 before like kind of the darkness really settled in. Like, I don't know, just like, what are your thoughts as far as not necessarily which seasons are better than most per se, but just the overall feeling that kind of each season exudes, right? Like how this season compares to the first two.
The first season is like, kind of just like chaotic in terms of like, what is my dad? How long is my dad gonna live? And if he does live, is he gonna give me a shot? I'm gonna do my own thing. Oh no, I got a kid inadvertently killed, and
Right.
then like the second
Kennedy myself.
and the second season, I mean, it's just kind of like you're in despair, and like everyone's in despair just because like everyone's just like in chaos again, but like times two, obviously. And then at the end, Kendall turns it around. And then this season has been like more like it's still chaotic, obviously, but like in a more low key and vulnerable way. Everyone is like at their most vulnerable, even Brian Cox, especially since we saw him at his most piss mad since at least season 1. So yeah, it's just like we get like mature chaos. This show is, I could say, but this show just made me feel just a little sad and a little empty near the end, just because I would like to know a little bit more of what Tom thinks he's doing and like what exactly he's gaining from this by fucking his wife over.
Right. I mean, and it's going to be interesting. I think one of the big, like, I guess if we can like get a little bit into like, potential theories as to what happens next season. I really don't want to do that because I personally don't think that this is the type of show that merits it. But what is going to be very interesting is Tom's decision, very similar to Kendall's decision at the end of season 2 that led to everything that we saw now. Is this going to be one of those moments where this was a move that he saw that was beneficial for him in the long run, or if he's going to fall victim to the same mistakes that all the Roy siblings do and ultimately let his emotions of wanting to get back at Shiv for the way that she's treated him, very similar to the way that Kendall as we've seen now, as this season is confirmed, that the move last season was ultimately much more of an FU with his dad for not taking him seriously rather than an actual serious move. We're going to see that play out next season for Tom, I think.
he didn't want to go to jail.
Right.
Too.
And he
But
obviously
like
didn't want to go to
Tom
jail.
didn't, but Tom didn't, it wasn't going to go to jail this season, unlike Kendall, in the end of the season, at least. Like, it wasn't heavily implied by the end of this season that, he was going to jail. He just fucks over his wife because his wife has just been, I mean, admittedly awful to him the whole show.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, well, you kind of get it, but like at the same time, it's still kind of, like you're saying, I agree with the latter thing you said, where it's more so like the ego and like more so just, you know, unintelligent vengeance, towards these people that have wronged them. Where it's just like, yeah, Tom is justified, but to a point where it's like, if you're gonna go for the throat, make it have some sort of purpose other than fuck you, you
Right.
know? Because he's like he's always like in a pickle, and he thinks he's gonna have so much power, and he holds this, you know, his hand out. He calls himself Satan, like, well, he kind of just, accepts himself as like Satan in front of Greg metaphorically, so it's just like he thinks like I think it's another example of someone being in over his head. I think he's kind of like adopting sort of like Kendall's arrogance and ego, and while making that decision and fucking over his wife. At least that's just what I interpreted. I could be wrong.
Yes, ultimately, it's as John Goodman quoted in the very underrated 2014 film The Gambler. Everybody operates from a position of "fuck you," and
Well, that's an underrated performance.
Absolutely,
He's great.
absolutely.
He's great
I finally watched that movie. You were not. I'm still not sure if I liked the movie per se, but Goodman
Right?
in particular was fucking.
No,
awesome
the original's
in that.
better. The original's a better movie.
Who did it? Did Cassavetes do the original?
No.
Okay, I'm totally
No.
getting my 70s
But
movies mixed up then.
fucking what's his name? Toback. James Toback wrote it.
Okay.
Forgot who directed that, but like James Caan was the star.
Oh, okay. Got it. Got
Yeah.
it. But yeah, so as far as predictions go, so siblings all team
They're
up
gonna have
again.
to team up, yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna have to. And so again, we see a whole new division. It's so interesting because again, think back to that poster we saw at the beginning of the season, and now we see effectively in a weird way they were like kind of like red herrings, as so many other things are on the show, and kind of like pointing us in the right direction as far as who's gonna line up on either side. And now it's Tom and by default Greg on Logan's side, and then all of the other siblings on the other. And what's even colder too is Jerry getting her revenge against Roman and in a way
and Shiv. No, and Shiv.
But way more so Shiv, even though Roman was the one that was directly affected because he's the one that got
Roman's like collateral damage, but she never really like cared as much for Roman as much as he wanted to think. So
it just shows that, again, like I love that.
And she was gonna get fired last night. That's what I'm saying about this show, of like how it like just goes, and like it's a seesaw of emotion. It's just like they were gonna stick the knife in her back. She was just like, no, motherfucker, I'm gonna stick the knife in your backs.
Yeah,
double style, like fucking Kill Bill, motherfucker.
And like
Jerry.
I love the visual like kind of display too of like those three executives, Frank, Carl, and Jerry kind of behind Logan the way that is. It's like, again, it shows the difference. I think it was so brilliant. Again, you want to talk about framing and visual storytelling, how it's framed. Again, it shows there was a reason why those three have been in their positions for as long as they have.
And Nicholas Bertel's score.
Oh my God. Like, okay, question. But of the two Nicholas Bertel scores in relation to Adam McKay things that we get this year, because obviously we know Adam McKay helped produce it. If you had to compare this season specifically to Don't Look Up score, which one are you going with?
I don't think that's fair because I mean, I'm not just praising Nicholas Bertel's score for this season. His score for all the seasons have been fantastic, and like just have gotten progressively better. And it's more so like an expanding piece of music, which isn't really that fair. Don't Look Up, it's a film score. In terms of film scores, I think it might be his best film score for Don't Look Up. I really liked his jazzy, like melancholic tone that he had for that, which was really great, and I loved it.
Still so mad that you got to see that movie in the theater, and I got to wait until freaking Christmas Eve like the rest of us chumps waiting for it on Netflix. But
it's not playing anywhere near you?
No, I checked my local theater's playing Being the Ricardo. I don't know what's going on. It's like these studios. I'm probably not paying to watch that in theaters. I'm sorry. As much as I love Sorkin, like I'm not at all
I'm gonna
confident
watch that.
hearing about that movie. But
Yeah.
yeah, what's it called? So I guess in that sense, final score for this season in general. What would you rate this season of Succession?
All right. Well, if I had to rate the first season, I'd probably give the first season like a 94. The second season, I would give like a 98. This season, I'd give like a 92.
All right. If we're rating, if I'm gonna give it my like if we're doing percentage scores, I'd say first season probably 93, second season 97, and this season I'm gonna put it even 95. Just still because of like my slight problems that I had with the first couple of episodes of the show prior to the boardroom meeting vote, which really for me is when the show really found its pace and really found its stride going forward. As far as Emmy potentials for this, we already talked about the what episodes could be nominated for writing, for directing. For me, again, Jeremy Strong and Brian Cox are both locked. Absolutely. I think that unlike last year, where it was kind of definitely more so on Strong shoulders, I definitely think that this is Cox's monologue, specifically in the final moments of this episode, solidified this is a horse race for sure between those two. Like, the more and more, the harder that I think about it as far as who they're going to be competing against.
It should be Jeremy Strong, though.
It should be. But as far as their competition, I really don't see who else like actually stands, because Carell. They do not submit Carell again this year. Billy Porter's out.
Carell would be supporting, I would say, but like he's not lead. He was never a lead on that show.
No, that was confusing to me to begin with. Bateman, it will be consistent as always in this most recent season of Ozark, and that I don't know
the most consistent performance on that show.
Yeah, and then they're splitting Better Call Saul up in the last season into two parts. So Odenkirk might have a shot, maybe, depending on how the reception for that final season goes.
What about Jeff Daniels for American Rust?
No idea. Haven't heard anything about that. Haven't heard any word for it.
I'm kidding. But
anyway,
obviously drama series, but like Nicholas Braun is not going to get in.
Nicholas Braun is not getting in this year.
That's a joke. It should really just be Matthew McFadden and Kieran Culkin in a similar horse race shot, like you're saying, like Brian Cox and Jeremy Strong.
Yeah,
like it's going to be neck and neck for the win. I would say. Like, I don't think Billy Crudup is definitely another win.
No. I agree. I'd be shocked if he even gets nominated, just because I don't know what the critical reception is going to be for the morning show, just because it's definitely gone down this season.
It hasn't been
the first season.
No, it's already no one really cares about that show.
Yeah, which I'm hoping.
I don't even know if that has like a third season coming.
God, I hope not.
It really doesn't deserve it.
Awful. Sarah Snook for supporting. J. Smith Cameron.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So potential for J. Smith Cameron, but we're both banking for Alan Ruck if they do nominate a third for supporting. I really hope it's Alan Ruck, because it's acting moments in this. Guest actors. I'm still pulling for 3, even though more than likely it'll just end up being Skarsgård and Brody.
Reed Birney, Justin Kirk, bring it. No, I'm kidding.
I'm hoping Justin Kirk gets it. I really, really am hoping that Justin Kirk gets it, just because I don't know how many other guest players are going to put in. Like, there haven't been that many like great guest supporting turnouts. But all I'm going to say too is, though, don't sleep on Squid Game. I can see that getting a lot of nominations.
And the mom too.
Oh, Harriet Walter, absolutely, 100%. I definitely think that she deserves it for this season.
She's going to win, I think,
way more than season 2. God, I hope so.
Cromwell could get another nomination too.
True, but I don't know. Just because of his usage.
But he always gets nominated for anything. He fucking won for a Horror Story when he didn't deserve it.
Crazy. So. That's still crazy to me. Absolutely.
Stupid. But he was nominated for an Oscar for Pig, and Richard Gere has 0 nominations. It's
hilarious. But anyways, man, this has been fun. This has been fun doing this these last couple weeks. I'm gonna miss doing this. I can't wait to do. I really hope the show comes back next year. That way we can keep doing this, because I had a lot of fun.
It is coming back next year. It's fucking.
Oh, it is.
Succession, it's renewed for season 4.
Well, I know it's renewed, but I wasn't sure if they were gonna like take a gap year for filming or do that thing, because HBO sometimes does that. It would really suck. But again, if this show comes back next year, we'll be back here, right here, recapping every episode, because again, this is the most watched show on the year right now. Even though the monoculture has essentially vanished, this is still the show for like people like us who love the prestige drama TV, and we're gonna be back recapping it every step of the way. This has been an absolute blast, Dustin. Thank you for doing this again. But this is, of course, not the last you'll see of the title, the self-named The Duster, the Mr. G movie reviews. We're doing a video for one of our favorite directors, one of the best working directors today, Paul Thomas Anderson. We're doing a retrospective video covering his entire career and and every one of his movies, building up to Licorice Pizza before we review it in that film as well. You're also going to be back for our Don't Look Up review as well. Once we put that out, we still got a decent amount more content coming to you guys. I've got a couple more top 10 lists before the end of the year. Chris and I are doing Spider-Man this coming Monday. Be sure to also check out our Spider-Man ranked video if you haven't already. We're also ranking every single MCU Phase 4 thing that's come out so far this year. We're doing that as well. Lots more content in the last couple of weeks of this year before the grand New Year's end. Dustin, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
YouTube.com/Mr. G Movie Reviews. Twitter, Dustin Mason on Letterboxd.
Absolutely. And of course, follow me at Movie Nerd Reviews on Facebook and Instagram, and follow us on our brand new Instagram account. That's right. Our old account, Talkin TV Podcast, is no more. Follow us on the brand new Instagram page at the official Talkin TV Podcast, where all of the new posts that we have going forward will be posted to. Guys, this has been an absolute blast. This has been so much fun recapping Succession for you guys week to week. We'll be back next year with even more TV recaps. In the meantime, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies.
Yeah.